Welcome everyone to the Q1 2024 Radworks community call. These calls are a time for orgs to present updates and announcements from the last quarter, as well as to highlight things to look out for in the coming quarter. This is also meant to be an opportunity for everyone from the community to ask questions to org lead or contributors in real time, and also just to say hi, check in once a quarter. We have a lot of really exciting updates to share today, plus a new org who will be joining the mix of presentations, which I'll say more to in just a second. A few housekeeping items before we get started. The call is scheduled for 90 minutes. I will be a lot more strict with time today, as I've let everyone who's presenting today know, and especially since we have an additional org to share their updates as well. The call will be recorded and shared on the Radworks YouTube channel afterwards. And if you have a question, please feel free to write it in the chat or raise your hand and kindly wait your turn. We'll try to get them to them in real time or at the end of the call. Okay, so before we jump in, just a quick overview of the agenda. Pretty simple, just announcements, org updates, and general Q&A at the end if there's time. Some announcements quickly. So there are a few, but I'll just touch on each of them very briefly. So the first big announcement from this last quarter was the Radicle 1.0 launch, which I know Fintan will say a lot more to later in his presentation, but this was a huge and very exciting step forward, not only for the Radicle Org, but for the entire Radworks community and anyone contributing to it in general. If you missed the launch announcement, I just shared it in the chat. Be sure to check that out, as well as all of their wonderful new resources, website, docs page, etc. Then the second one is the new org, which is the Radicle Integrations and Tooling Org. This org was born out of the Radworks grants program and just recently passed their proposal to create and fund their own org to continue their work. I know Yorgos will have a lot more to say about that during his update, but I wanted to share that announcement here as well. We do have a live proposal actually on the forum, RGP 25, to start yet another org. So get the next community call might be even more exciting than this one will be. But RGP, the Radworks Seed Network, RGP 25 would start the Radworks Seed Network, the RSN org. I will share links to the proposal, the active snapshot poll, and the recording of the last proposal review, where we discussed this proposal in a lot of detail, and there was a lot of good questions and nuggets that came out of that call. So be sure to check that out. It also is, I will say, informal review right now, so the snapshot poll is live until Monday, and if that passes, it will be moved to an on-chain vote next week. Another just brief announcement is that there have been quite a few updates to the Radworks docs pages, as well as the governance manual. The updates on the docs primarily include or are pertaining to the ecosystem page, as well as the governance overview page. And I definitely recommend going to take a look at some of the new diagrams and also information that are listed on those pages, which I'm sharing in the chat right now. In the governance manual, Abby and the governance committee, has been working really hard to add additional information, clarifications, and resources for proposal authors to that over the last quarter or two to help make everything a little clearer and easier to follow. So just wanted to call those out because they're kind of relevant to the whole community here. And last but not least, there is a request for feedback on an annual org timeline, an org cycle timeline, proposal timeline. This is an initiative that is led by the governance and ops committees. And the purpose or the aim of creating this timeline is really to help plan for the upcoming org proposal cycle, which, as we all know, was very intense and a little hectic last November. So this is just to help clarify kind of timelines and expectations of when certain information will be received and how we can all better together review that information. So yeah, I just shared the link to that. They're looking for, or we are looking for feedback on that by Friday this week. So if you have time, please go take a look at it and leave any feedback there. So now to the main event. We have 5 orgs presenting today. They all prepared, in addition, a written update, which you will always be able to find on the forum at community.radworks.org under org updates. I will be sharing, of course, as always, links to each individual update as we go through, but just wanted to remind everyone where they can find them any other time as well. So I will now hand the mic off to Fintan, who will be doing the Radicle update.
Wow, thank you, Shelby.
But actually, before I do that, just a reminder that I'll be a little stricter with time. So I'll be posting in the chat as we go when you have like 10 minutes, 5 minutes, and 2 minutes left. Everybody has a total of about 15 minutes. But yeah,
all right,
just
should be short, snappy, and sweet.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Yeah, cool. All right, I presume everyone can see my screen. So
Yes.
Cloudhead took some notes, and I'll just quickly go through them. So yeah, after unexpectedly being featured on the #1 page of Hacker News pre-launch, we put in some stellar work, both figuratively and literally, into creating a 1.0 RC1. So they technically are release candidates before we're fully 1.0. But we've done that, and we're working towards the final 1.0. All the news generated brought people into the Zulip and started running public seed nodes. So we've seen an uptick in that and an uptick in support and feedback requests as well. There's around 160 daily active nodes. So yeah, clear uptick from what were we, like 10 nodes before. And we're seeing lots of new repos being hosted on the Radicle network as a whole. So yeah, most of the past quarter we were gearing up for this 1.0 launch, writing lots of great documentation that's actually gotten a lot of good feedback as well. There's been a lot of feedback on the Zulip saying how well written it was, how clear it was, and then like also some feedback to help improve it along the way as well. Our main goal was stabilizing what we have for this 1.0 launch, and we got to a good place, and we're working on stabilizing it. So yeah, in Q2 we want to cut this final release of the candidate, or like the 1.0. So shifted from release candidate to full release. Some things there are just the kind of network interactions, stabilizing the fetch protocol even more so than before. Did notice that some scaling issues were occurring as more people were interacting with the network, so we're fleshing that out more and more. We're going to set up a blog, so lots of technical writing to come. Working on find and reproducible builds or binaries. One of our biggest critiques that we get is this downloading Radicle via curl. So that will be amazing. There's going to be a revamp on the web page, the node page, the web interface. So the web team are working on that. They're also going to be working on notifications, and we're going to be looking at 1.1, the next big announcement. So watch out for that. Radicle 2e, so that'll be fun as well for all the terminal users. Big quality of life improvements there, trying to not copy and paste hashes all the time. And then lots of good work on CI integrations natively on Radicle. Exciting stuff. Can't wait. Any questions?
Any questions or comments for Fintan or the Radicle team?
Sweet. Love to not hear it.
Or save it for the forum and go comment and ask questions on their update on the forum.
Yes, please.
Come at a later time. Great. Okay, that was short and sweet. Great. Okay, if there are no immediate questions and comments right now, then we can have Fintan stop sharing his screen and all good. It was just the call recording. We will move over to the Radicle Integrations and Tooling Org to give their very first ever quarterly community call update. Yorgos?
Yes, hello. Yeah, I can see my screen being shared. Cool.
Yes. Could you zoom in a little bit, please?
Sure.
Perfect.
Great. So yeah, thanks. It's really good to be here. And let's see if I can meet Fintan's high bar with like keeping it so short and sweet. So I've actually posted the update on the forum, but like because this is the Q1 update, the actual like Q1 update is in this other place, this other post linked here, which is it was the last grant we received from Radworks grants org. And I've highlighted here what we've kind of shipped last quarter. So one of the main things has been like these CI/CD tool integrations with existing CI/CD systems. The main one is the GitHub Actions one. That seems to be the one most people are looking for. Not so much for the features, but I think because of the fact that GitHub gives free compute there and free actions. Minutes. Yeah, so we've got this working on a couple of repositories. The web team is also looking at enabling that on their own on the Radicle interface repository. And this basically allows project maintainers to keep using GitHub Actions while they're in this process of migrating to Radicle, right? We don't see this as some kind of like long-term plan. Ideally, people should move to self-hosted solutions, or ideally the Radicle native CI. But for migrating to Radicle, I think this will be a really important piece to get us there. So yeah, getting this more stable, improving the reporting a little bit. So right now it leaves comments with, when the GitHub Actions job finishes, it posts a comment on the patch. And we're improving the UX there. And instead of multiple comments, we'll have a single comment that gets updated and so on. And we've got some new guides for both project maintainers and seed node operators. It would actually be great to have some feedback on those. So if you're thinking about setting CI integration up, check it out. Let us know on Zulip about that. We've got some sample Jenkins pipeline to show how we could integrate with Jenkins CI. This is based on the outgoing webhooks integration, which also received some improvements this last quarter. We persist all the webhook invocations, so you can see, if you communicated that correctly to the other system. Again, mentioned to the docs. And we also have a command line tool that makes it easy to add webhooks to your project, outgoing webhooks to your project, so you can integrate with other systems. And yeah, this is linked here, and you can check it out and let us know if that works and how well it does for you and what you need improved. And a couple more integrations with Woodpecker CI. This one has actually been ongoing for a while, but it's been kind of blocked up until the day before yesterday. Actually, we were waiting for them to rework their add-ons architecture, and they just merged that out. Actually, this 2.50 is not yet released, so we're waiting for that, and then we can ship the Radicle Forge implementation as an add-on for Woodpecker CI. The Concourse CI integration is what our team uses for our CI/CD workflow. So when we want to produce a binary of one of all these projects, so we have a self-hosted Concourse CI instance, and we're running all these pipelines there. And we have this self-hosted Minio instance. Minio is a S3 bucket compatible storage, and we host the binaries there. And yeah, I've got links here for people who want to follow those through and see how those are set up. We wanted to take a look at some kind of Zulip integration, but we didn't have time for that. And finally, Kraken CI, we've got that most of the way there. It's working. We've got a post by the Kraken CI maintainer who's explaining how to set that up. That's it on the CI front. For the IDE tools, in the JetBrains IDE plugin, we shipped several kind of bug fix releases, maintaining compatibility with Radicle and also with JetBrains IDE releases. But the main kind of new feature there was patch reviews. Now from your IDE, you can leave a review, which is something you couldn't before. On the VS Code front, there was like there was a single release, but it was very kind of feature packed. And I won't open it here, but there's a really big change log with all the changes that went into that. If you're a VS Code user, do check that out. For migration tooling, kind of really two main things there. First is wikis from GitHub. We now have a way to migrate them into a Radicle repository, and this CLI tool allows you to do that. And also, apart from GitHub, we've now gone into GitLab, and your GitLab issues can also be migrated to Radicle. And the other cool thing is that, there's this migration period when people might be trying out Radicle and also have the project on GitHub and on GitLab. And this always-on mirroring tool is for that phase of a project. And that way you can keep your GitHub or GitLab issues open and have this tool sync them to Radicle and update them with everything that's happening on GitHub or GitLab. Mirror that to Radicle as well. You might be working on Radicle, but people might be more used to GitHub issues. Finally, the last one is the planning boards tool, the kind of project management web-based tool we've been working on. That also received a couple of nice touches. On this board, you can now also see patches. so we can have like, more lightweight workflows for people or projects who don't necessarily want to create an issue for every single task they undertake. So you can see your patches now on a board and move them across columns and so on. We've improved the way the ordering now persists. It didn't before, and kind of you can reorder columns. And there are some performance improvements and UX improvements here. But that's really promising, and I think this is now in a very good place. We're about to start using this as well. And this is going back to kind of the more forward-looking part. This is also going to be our main focus for Q2, making these tools stable, making sure they really work for us, and they crash less, and it's everything is more reliable, in line with like the 1.0 phase that Radicle is going towards. The other thing is this focus on the kind of user research, where we want to establish a process, work on that a little bit for how we collect feedback, how we conduct the user interviews, and find some people. So yeah, also a shout out if you are using some of those tools, we'd love to speak to you, and love to hear what you think is missing and what doesn't work well, and get that done. Very quickly, there's like for planning board specifically, we want to start using COBs. We don't today, so we'll be working with the Radicle core team to enable that. For CI integrations, again, like more stable and resilient infrastructure there, because when CI/CD doesn't work and a project is relying on that, they're like blocked. And yeah, support people as they onboard. And for IDE tooling, we're going to be focusing more on VS Code, actually, which is a little bit behind in terms of features. And we want to make it possible to create and review and merge patches directly from VS Code, because right now you can it's mostly read-only, the functionality there. And yeah, I think that's about it. I hope I'm not over time.
Great, thank you so much, Yorgos. Does anybody have any questions or comments for Yorgos and the Radicle Integrations and Tooling team?
I have one quick question.
Yeah.
First of all, I think it's super exciting what you're doing on the CI front. I think it's like a huge kind of, adoption blocker potentially if it wouldn't exist. So I think it's super great to see that. I was wondering, like you said, that there's a GitHub Actions integration. Does that require actually mirroring your repository to GitHub, or is that not necessary? It does.
Yes, it does. It does.
Makes
GitHub
sense.
Actions will only allow runs on code that's hosted on GitHub.
Okay, but you get like the comments of like the successful runs back on Radicle.
Exactly. Yes.
Got it. Awesome. Cool. Nice.
Great. Anyone else? No? Okay. Well, thank you again so much. Good job on your first ever org presentation in the quarterly community call. We're excited to hear more from you folks in the next one after you've gotten in the groove a little bit here as well, settled into the new org structure. So, okay, then we will move on, or I'll pass it off to the DRIPS team. And I believe
Hello.
Jason is presenting today.
That's right. I'm presenting today. Ila couldn't make it, unfortunately. Can you all hear me all right?
Yes.
All right, cool. You can
And
see the
your
post.
screen.
Amazing. That would have been my next question.
Can you zoom in a little bit, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's just go right in with the general updates. So first of all, we are making some really good progress in partnering with a bunch of very well-known organizations that want to fund their dependencies on drips. I know that's quite vague. I wish I could say more, but we can't just yet because those conversations are still not fully concluded. But let's just say some really good stuff is coming, and stay tuned for more announcements this quarter. That's all we can share today, unfortunately. Moving right on, we have something very exciting in the pipeline that is actually supposed to launch later this week, which we call multi-party or multiplayer drip lists. Quick sneak peek. Essentially, we set out to build this kind of family of features we call multiplayer for this year because we just realized that it's actually not trivial for organizations to figure out what their dependencies are and also which one of them they want to fund, especially in distributed teams or things like DAOs. And so this first iteration that we are going to release very soon is essentially just a way for any group of people to come together and just vote on the recipients of the drip list before it goes live on chain. So the way this works is just very quickly, someone creates a so-called collaborative drip list and then submits a list of any number of collaborators, which are just Ethereum addresses. This collaborative drip list is off-chain for now. And then they submit kind of a voting period, like a date at which voting ends. And all the collaborators can come in and submit basically what they want the list to look like before that date. And then at the end, you get the final draft and you can just put it on chain and then fund it. So it's a very simple kind of voting solution. It's off-chain. So no gas fees or anything like that. It works with any amount of collaborators. That's just the first iteration that we're launching very shortly. There's a lot of stuff coming up. Some of it is already, almost ready for release pretty quickly, including the ability to do this whole process for an existing drip list to update the recipients later on. And then also, more importantly, the ability to actually have a separate nomination round in front of the voting round where anyone publicly can nominate projects to be on the list kind of retro PGF style. And once all of this is implemented, you can essentially run a pretty big number of general kind of public goods funding mechanisms that people are very fond of, including things like retro PGF just on drips, right? Which is pretty cool. And we're hoping that a lot of orgs are going to make use of this in the future. Cool. Going back here real quick. So in Q1, a lot of very exciting FOSS projects signed up to drips or claimed their repository on drips rather. Just a few quick highlights. We got Prettier, which is pretty huge because it's a very well, everyone in basically front-end work or JavaScript generally uses this. Then there's Vim, one of the two kind of major Ethereum libraries. We have PNPM, which is another kind of big non-Web3 specific project that signed up. Same with Vitest, which is also a very big project that is not Web3 specific, and also VS Codium, many more. You can actually go and check out all the projects on our homepage now. So yeah, there's some pretty good names in here. So we're quite happy with onboarding, especially some of these non-Web3 specific projects lately. And then lastly, we are basically ready to deploy to L2s from a technical point of view, and are just kind of figuring out exactly in which sequence we should do so. Of course, we do want to deploy to L2s. Some of them are kind of connected to potential negotiations in terms of doing actually funding rounds on drips on these L2s. But also generally, just being on L2s obviously is going to make the UX a lot better because gas is super low and transactions are super fast. So yeah, pretty excited about this as well. Next up, I wanted to quickly show you a few larger features that we launched in Q1 for the app. So opening up the app here, the first thing is something pretty nice if you're a recipient of funds, which is that now instead of having to go and find your specific token that you received, you just have a global USD value of everything you can collect right now up here. We call it the global collect button, and when you click it, you just see all the coins or tokens that you've received, and you just have to send one transaction and it collects all of them to your wallet. So it's a nice kind of quality of life improvement right there. Next up is the Explore page, which we're looking at right now. It's kind of the new entry point for the app that just shows you a bunch of activity on drips. So you can see that we have here some stats, like the total drip right now, also the TLV of our contracts. We have some featured projects from the ecosystem, some featured drip lists right here, and then also like recently claimed projects, which update every 2 hours, I believe. And then lastly, another new feature, which is the blog. So we also launched a new little blog in the app this quarter. Not a ton of posts here yet, but many more to come. It's all kind of SEO optimized and everything. So we now have like a nice place to put announcements and stuff like that. And then the last thing, you've seen it here actually, is that you can finally also have custom images as project avatars on drips, in addition to, of course, just choosing an emoji. Cool, moving on. Some quick updates on our objectives. So the first thing is attract 5 new orgs that fund their critical software dependencies, and then also additional 1 million deposited in drips. So we are definitely a bit behind on these 2 objectives right now when it comes to Q1. And the reason for that is that we took a little bit longer than we anticipated in just like figuring out our L2 deployment strategy. There were a bunch of things to consider there, like also happy to answer any questions, but essentially that kind of like turned out to be a bit of a larger discussion, and it became a bottleneck for reaching these goals because like which L2s we are happy to deploy on, or like how we're going to navigate this whole like question really kind of dictates like what funders we can close and how quickly. But good news is we figured it out, of course. And we are currently like in very late stage conversations with 6 pretty big names in the space. And we are very confident that we're going to be closing many/most of them in Q2. So again, stay tuned for the announcements there. All right, moving on to the roadmap. We already talked about multi-party drip list creation, so just going to go ahead and talk about KYC real quick. So we thought that we have to build a KYC solution in our app, but it actually turned out in Q1 that that's probably not the best idea, because KYC is incredibly specific to specific needs of specific funders and their like specific, legal situations and stuff like that. And it just turned out that we probably, like, it doesn't make sense for us to try and figure out like a general solution, if that even exists, to cover all these needs. And so what we're doing instead is we are kind of offering people to like bring in an external expert or consultant on KYC and kind of figure out their specific needs and solutions with them for each kind of, funder that we're talking to. And so far that seems to be a much better approach generally. Okay, lastly, quick update on the budget. So we are slightly above budget for Q1, but I mean, yeah, the increase in the reasons for that are basically kind of ramping up BD and marketing lately a little bit. But we do expect to be back on track by the end of Q2. That's it. Any questions?
I love how on like the written update, it just looks like a boring list of words sometimes, but these are like huge, massive, super important, super exciting updates. So you need to figure out how to like make them more exciting somehow. But yeah, that's really exciting. I loved the voting, the voting aspect of how you could do the multi-party drip list. That was really cool. Big fan of that as a governance facilitator.
Yeah, it is kind of like we do. I mean, the whole idea was born from just like wanting to approach DAOs, and they're like very decentralized, obviously. So it's actually quite hard to like figure out the list of dependencies. So this is really what this is for, at least the first iteration.
Yeah, very cool. Any questions? Yes, please go ahead.
Hey, Jason, just to return the question. No.
Thank you.
But how are you finding talking to the recipients of funds? I remember, some while back, people were not responding to the issues you were creating. You were trying to get a hold of them to tell them, you've got money waiting for you, and they were just ignoring you. Is that changing? Is that kind of still?
I'm not sure if Luke is in the call. I don't think so. Because I'm just like he's doing all of this, but I mean, from what I hear from him, it's definitely going a lot better lately. Even though he stopped opening issues on GitHub, so we're now kind of reaching out more directly on like projects, Discords and Zulip and stuff like that. And we did make one very big leap forward, which is figuring out a collaboration with Open Collective, which is kind of a fiscal host for a lot of like major open source projects. And we basically partnered with them, and now they can claim on behalf of the project and like figure out all of the accounting essentially for them. None of the money ever sees like anyone personally, right? It's all kind of managed by them. And since we did this, we had kind of a big like wave of claims of especially like non-Web3 specific projects. And there's more to come, like including Svelte, which is going to claim through Open Collective. So yeah, that was a big breakthrough for us.
Nice, nice, really good news.
All right.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, then we will move on. Thank you, Jason, and for the great update and really, really cool stuff coming from the Drips team there.
Thank you.
Okay, then we will move on to the grants org update with Boredom.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, can, and we can see your screen.
Great. Okay. Yeah, so just a quick overview of what we've been up to this quarter. Yeah, as Yorgos alluded to, we made our final grants to their team before they started their own org. Yeah, and this mostly included kind of getting CI/CD started, planning board, and the other parts that Yorgos mentioned earlier. We also funded Natter, who's got a big developer relations community on Twitter and YouTube, who made us a quick tutorial video with the Radicle 1.0 launch. One other thing to announce is we've started very early talks to create a formal entity around the grants program. And this was kind of, aside from like the basic compliance that we want to get aligned with, Yorgos's team had given us feedback that having an entity would have been nice. So just for the convenience of future grantees, it's also something that we were looking forward to doing. So this is very early days on this. Nothing's set in stone. We haven't made a timeline yet. But just so people know, like we'll probably end up having a kind of like more legit looking entity that like does KYC for every grantee and has a legal entity. And where we put that entity and those sort of details are not quite hashed out. Another update is membership. We'll be removing someone from our multi-sig. They just haven't voted in the last year, so they've been a bit inactive. And that's kind of in our charter just says that we expect committee members to be kind of actively engaged with incoming grants and reviews and all that. A quick summary on the updates and kind of what our quarterly goals were. To start with, a significant amount of this quarter was actually spent just getting the 2004 org proposal approved. So that's a huge chunk of time was spent doing that. In terms of recruiting, we had a goal of onboarding grantees to more permanent work within the Radicle ecosystem. So I spent a good bit of time kind of over, I guess, last quarter and this quarter sharing notes and compiling stuff with Yorgos as they were getting their org proposal done. So I think with that, I'm really excited that they've started their own org. It's a great kind of success story in terms of being able to show people a tangible example of someone who comes in as a community contributor and goes on to start their own org and get direct funding from from Radworks. So I think that's awesome that we accomplished that. So congrats to Yorgos and everyone else on your team. I'm really excited for you guys. Another thing is dog fooding. So like this is just kind of an ongoing, just sort of standard that we want to keep ourselves to. So just always paying out grants via drips, and then switching our documentation over to Radicle, which we haven't done yet, but we have funded all of our grants with drips, and a little bit on the budget. Total that we've spent was around 82,000 in USDC and 35,000 in RAD. And these are the drip links in case you're curious about kind of when they started and ended and all that. The remaining funds that we have kind of broken out here. So we're, we can still do some sizable grant work here. And the caveat here is, some of the way that this funding looks right now may change in the future with regards to the new entity creation. Yeah, that's it from my side. Any questions? I'm going to stop presenting.
Great, thank you. Any questions or comments for Boredom or about the grants org update? Great. Okay. Then we will move on to our final org presentation today, which is the Foundation org. And I believe Angie is presenting that. Wonderful. Then I'll pass them back to you. And then at the end, if there's any other questions or things we want to chat about, we have plenty of time. So that's exciting as well. But first, the Foundation org update.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Shelby. Wow, Alexi has left the meeting. I'll tease him later. All right. Thank you all for sticking around. I appreciate it. We'll try to make this also short and sweet. Starting with a couple of general announcements. One big one is that we've shifted our approach to Radworks marketing. And this shift in approach will be led by Ele in the interim. I'll go ahead maybe and go into that a little bit. It's located in the Foundation Council updates as well. But I'm going to actually right after this call be pushing onto the forum the new Radworks marketing strategy. And this will include the intentions to start to hire for a marketing lead and video producer. So I've gone ahead and linked to those job descriptions. So that hopefully some of you all are thinking about folks in your networks that could potentially be good fits for these roles. And generally speaking, this new Radworks marketing strategy is in response to the new narrative push around Radworks. So if you go and take a look at the forum post related to Radworks' strategy and how we're going to be shifting around that. There was a forum poll for those of you who might remember. The intentions around the new marketing activities are in response directly to that. So as I said, that will be up later this afternoon. Another general announcement is that strategy and governance committees will be publishing the revised Q2 objectives later this week. So we are adapting our own objectives here in light of some of these changes as well. Okay, so maybe to carry on into the Foundation Council, there's been a fair amount of activity in the last 3 months. We've made some changes to the language on the Foundation's website. So not only changing the name to the Better Internet Foundation, but reflecting really the language that was in the Foundation org's past proposal from November. So that's looking good and swanky. We've published our own 2023 activity and financial report to Radworks. So basically talking through everything that the Foundation worked on in 2023 and paid for in 2023, and just making comments about that work and what we've maybe learned from last year and how we will think about that as we continue through 2024. I already mentioned the change in marketing strategy. We did have a foundation council meeting, which happens quarterly. We welcomed a new member, Gabriella, who has been a great advocate and strategist for us already as our accountant. But yes, she has joined as of April 1st. And we've said goodbye to Alexi, so we thank him for his service. We've also onboarded a strategic financial partnerships manager, and that's Katya, who's also a contributor we've worked with in the past and who's been a great help to us, both in Switzerland and in Germany. And in record time, we completed the foundation's annual audit, thanks to some great support from Wendy on the ops team. We were able to do a very fairly quick and painless audit. We were very well prepared for it and had all of our ducks in order. So that's great. Moving on to the ops committee. The big part of the beginning of the year is about closing out the 2023 accounts, which we did successfully, and working on supporting the Foundation Council in the 2023 audit, as well as preparation of that 2023 report to Radworks. The Ops Committee also facilitated the Foundation Council meeting in Q1 and making sure that they had space for us, that we got there all right, that we made the best use of our time in Zurich, even meeting with some additional stakeholders while we were there. And in general, when it comes to the Radworks ecosystem support, the work that was done was a good chunk of this work. I know a lot of you have probably seen it in some of our one-on-ones, but is really providing potential orgs with some operational information and support, whether that be Yorgos and his team, or LA and in the formation of the RSN org. This is work that we continue to do to help set up new orgs for success. And we progressed with several of our trademarks. This is sort of an ongoing effort. Trademarks, surprise, surprise, take a long time. So we continue to sort of make progress on the DRIPS, Radworks, and Radicle front. We carried out some risk analysis internally, which is going to better inform our ecosystem priorities. This risk analysis is informing actually already some of the governance and strategic work, again, that will reinform these priorities and objectives. And we'll see that in the newly published Q2 objectives later this week. And we continued administering contributor vesting contracts. The strategy committee facilitated several conversations in the last few months. The first being with regards to the Radworks strategy, which I mentioned before, and also with regards to kind of reflecting some of that new narrative language in the Radworks website, as well as some strategic communications as we push forward new language around how we talk about Radworks generally. Moving on to governance committee. We saw a governance feedback survey, and Shelby did a really good summary of that survey that has been used to directly inform, again, some of the governance objectives, and will continue to be informing those objectives for Q2 as well. As she mentioned earlier, she also published an annual org proposal timeline where we're seeking some input from contributors. And when it comes to defining what an org is, all the discussion around the grants org and the potential Radworks tooling org really pushed this discussion around what is an org. And so this is informing work around how do we move forward with the grants org, how do we get grants out to the right projects, and it's also for us informing even more work on how do we create a minimum set of requirements for orgs going forward as we think about 2025. a couple folks from the team were in Denver, which is great, and hosted yet another global governance gathering, which has been, I've heard nothing but great things. Is that true?
Governance Geeks Gathering.
Sorry, Governance Geeks gatherings.
I'll fix that later.
We'll fix that later, and we should make sure that also the key takeaways is also pointing to the right one. And generally speaking, I mean, there's a lot here, but as Shelby mentioned, there have been updates to the governance manual, and various adjustments to the Discord as well. All right. Moving down into timeline and budget. So everyone is basically within budget here, and we're not seeing too many surprise expenses. Only want to kind of call out from the strategy committee that there have been some overspends based on team events and offsites in Q1, but we expect a reduction in spend over the next quarter. But in general, everything else has been underspending so far. So there we have it. Any questions?
I have one.
Mhm.
Actually. You had mentioned earlier that there was, and maybe I missed it, that you folks were conducting a risk analysis. I was wondering if that will be made public, and if so, when, or parts of it.
Yeah, I think maybe parts of it will be made public. Some of it is just part of the legal analysis that we do for Radworks, and some of that we don't want to increase our risk by publishing these kind of documents. So we will probably, I think we will allude to certain risks as part of triggering certain work in our ecosystem, and the connection will be made at that point in time. Great.
Yeah. Thanks. I think, whatever can be shared or whatever you feel comfortable sharing, I think will be helpful in helping inform decisions on other things or proposals that we'll probably be seeing on the forum over the coming months or year or so. So awesome. Any other questions or comments for Angie or any of the committees? I will take that premature applause as a no. Thank you, Angie, for presenting. Always a very hefty update. And thank you to all the presenters who did a great job presenting some really big and important updates today. We have so much time left. I'm actually blown away, even with an extra org. So that's awesome. I guess I will ask once if there's any just kind of remaining questions from anything that was discussed on the call today, or just any other questions in general that you would want to surface on this call. Leave a second for that. Okay. Cool. Everybody's happy. Then we will call it here. Thanks everyone for joining. I will, as always, post the call recording on YouTube either tomorrow or latest by Friday. Yes, Finton.
I was just gonna say that mentioned that there's a bit of a meetup at the end of May because of all the conferences and stuff.
Oh, super good. Super good shout. Yeah. Do you have anything solid to share on the Radicle side? Because I know there'll be quite a few people coming to Berlin.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few of us attending Local First, which is the 31st of May, 30th and 31st of May. Can't remember. And then there's some other fun conferences. I'll personally be there from the 22nd of May until mid-June. So if anyone wants to hang out.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, good shout. I will also, there's a few things. There's ETHBerlin, there's the Local First conference that's happening all at the end of May. I'll add links to those conferences also in the list of links that I always share in the call recording. But yeah, I think there'll be a lot of folks from the Radicle team, a few folks from Drips, and there's just generally quite a few of us who are based in Berlin. So if you'll be around, definitely keep an eye out for any announcements or opportunities to meet up. Yes, Angie.
Hi, I just wanted to maybe call out Becca. And Becca, will you be doing sort of a roundup, perhaps potentially, of everything that's going on?
Yeah, I will do. We just had a Drips call just before this, and I was kind of like, we'll do a couple of Drips bits, and I'll just outline where there are interesting and relevant conferences and events happening. And yeah, there is, for everybody kind of like in the team that has access to like the Notion, there is an events kind of like calendar in the Notion with the things that we're thinking of going to kind of like over the course of the year.
Awesome. Thank you.
But yeah, if anybody's got any questions about things, then yeah, just like get me on Telegram and I can give you a little like personalized update.
Cool. Maybe we even do just like a forum post, like once we have things figured out just for Berlin, like that week or whatever, or on Discord or everywhere. But yeah, cool. Sounds good. Okay. Yes, and the whole ops community. So many people, so many things. Just come to Berlin. Everybody come to Berlin. It's going to be a great time. Okay, then I will officially call it or cut it here. Thanks again, everyone. The recording and the notes and the links will be up tomorrow, latest on Friday. But yeah, and hope everybody has a great and productive Q2. Bye.
Thank you all. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.